Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the actual mechanics of spiritual momentum. We are going to explore a really compelling concept from our source material, specifically looking at how true faith moves believers forward. And as you'll see, gaining that momentum almost always requires us to totally leave our comfort zones. So let's decode exactly how this works.
Right off the bat, let's explore a profound paradox the source presents. You might naturally assume that a belief system thrives best in an environment of total peace and security, right? Well, actually, the evidence suggests the exact opposite. Faith is frequently most powerful not when times are easy, but when believers are suddenly, and sometimes forcefully, pushed right out of their safe, controlled spaces. So how does that even happen? Let's break it down.
All right, moving into part one, the urgency of action.
To really wrap our heads around this sense of urgency, let's look at a historical case study from the Book of 2 Kings. The Israelites in Jerusalem were trapped in a siege. Now, a siege is a desperate scenario where all communication and resources are just completely cut off. It's basically the ultimate picture of stagnation. You have a population being starved into total physical and spiritual standstill. I mean, you literally cannot move.
But picture this, right outside those city walls, a massive contrast was playing out. There were these 4 lepers, outcasts who were strictly forbidden from entering the city, and they were faced with a pretty brutal choice: stay there and starve, or walk straight toward the enemy camp. Because they were forced into movement, they discovered an unbelievable surprise. The enemy camp was completely abandoned and just overflowing with food and treasure. They ate to their fill and gathered up all their findings.
And here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. When these 4 outcasts found this ultimate sustenance, their very first instinct was, of course, to keep it. But then it hit them. This realization is captured perfectly in this quote: "What we're doing is not right. This is a day of good news, and we are keeping it to ourselves." In an instant, their instinct drastically shifted from basic self-preservation to a deeply felt, urgent necessity to move backward into danger just to share this lifeline with the starving people inside the walls. Finding the good news literally demanded forward momentum.
Which brings us to part two, setbacks as faithful scatterings.
Fast forward to the Book of Acts, and we see this exact same principle applied to unexpected life crises. Without persecution, the early believers honestly probably would have just stayed comfortable where they were. But on day 1, intense persecution begins. And this extreme adversity, it completely forces the church to scatter. Over the coming weeks and months, those who scattered went on to preach the word wherever they ended up. It's wild to think about, but the tragedy itself was the very engine that spread their message way beyond their own borders.
And this quote right here, it hits the nail on the head. The church is most powerful, not when gathered comfortably, but when scattered faithfully. It brilliantly illustrates the core thesis of our source material. The ultimate strength of deep conviction is activated through movement and dispersion, not through just comfortably gathering together. Growth absolutely requires leaving the comfort zone, even if you're entirely forced out of it.
So, we have to ask ourselves, how does this historical blueprint actually apply to you and me today? What if the thing in your life that feels like a massive setback right now is actually a scattering? Maybe it's a job relocating you, or a sudden unexpected shift in a relationship, or just unplanned circumstances dropping you into a totally new environment. This explainer really challenges us to view these not as accidental roadblocks, but as intentional repositionings designed to move us into brand new areas of influence. Okay, moving on to part 3, redefining the greater works.
So in the book of John, believers are actually called to do greater works. Now that sounds impossibly grand, doesn't it? But it's so vital to demystify this. Greater works aren't necessarily about possessing intense theological knowledge or, performing massive mystical miracles. They are actually deeply grounded in the cumulative, everyday actions of ordinary people. We're talking about simply spreading love individually, whether that's to the neighbor across the street or just the cashier at your local supermarket.
The source breaks this grand, abstract idea down into a highly actionable 3-step procedure to help practice momentum. Step 1, simply pray for a specific name every single day. Step 2, take the initiative to learn the name of a neighbor you previously didn't know. And step 3, consistently show up in their life. It's really that simple. This proves that true spiritual momentum isn't about those grand, sweeping gestures. It's all about establishing consistent, forward-moving daily habits. And that leads us perfectly into part 4, go and never stop. So sustaining this trajectory over the long haul means you have to push through friction.
For a modern real-world example of this, let's look at Movement Church. Right at year 0, they were straight up told to close their doors. But instead of giving up, a fraction of a year later, they launched out in a park. By year 3, they were navigating some tough leadership changes, and by year 5, they were celebrating steady growth in a totally new space. Pushing through the pain of a forced scattering is exactly the thing that builds a lasting foundation.
Generating that kind of lasting movement means actively overcoming your own internal friction. It means consciously choosing to ignore those little whispers telling you that you aren't good enough or that you don't know enough scripture. You have to trust that the right words will arrive precisely when you need them. And when you mess up, because let's face it, we all do, treat those mistakes simply as a reason to get back on the bike and just keep riding. Ultimately, getting through that friction requires embracing a systematic, disciplined plan for your daily rhythms.
To wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a slightly provocative thought. Take a look at the obstacles and uncomfortable disruptions happening right now in your own journey. What if the setback in your life is actually a scattering? What if it is the exact momentum you needed to step into a much wider purpose? Keep moving forward, focused learners, and never stop. Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep exploring.